Hello, and welcome to the Strategic Alignment Podcast. This program is all about providing leaders and managers with meaningful insights on how to optimize business results by aligning their people strategy to their business strategy. Our goal is to support you as you rise to the challenges of complex decision-making centered around attracting and retaining top talent.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Strategic Alignment Podcast. I am your host, Chauna-Kaye Pottinger, and I'm right here with my co-host, Jaymie Pottinger.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Thank you for joining us for another Strategic Alignment Podcast. I'm looking to have some good conversation this evening as we talk about workplace. We talk about toxic workplace and how can you spot those spaces and see exactly the kind of impact that is having on you, your team, and the level of performance and the kind of results that you're getting. So it's really an exciting topic. You know, most times when I have conversations with team members and leaders, they always ask questions like, I'm finding it difficult to get the kind of results that I need. And I recognize that people are leaving, people are not satisfied, they're not fulfilled. And I'm always like, wow, have you stopped to really check to see the red flags that you've been seeing for months that would have allowed you to recognize that you're really in a toxic work environment?
Yeah. So Jaymie has pretty much covered it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the podcast today. I'm kidding.
I wish it was that easy.
So really, I do believe that the workplace culture is such an important factor in determining a lot of factors when it comes down to productivity, when it comes down to employee morale. There's so many factors that goes into that end result that a manager and a leader is trying to get from their team. But many people underestimate the importance of having a culture that is free of toxicity. And so this evening, we are going to be exploring the subject matter of what are some of the things that you can look for in your workplace. And if you see these things, now we don't want to say that these factors, they operate in isolation. It's a combination of them that really result in employees feeling as if they're not valued and that their work culture is toxic. And so we want to just emphasize that from the very jump. We're not going to say, hey, if you see one thing going on in your workplace that Jaymie mentioned here today, or I may mention today, that you should say, oh, it's time for me to go. We don't want you to do that. So let me just make that disclaimer up front. But Jaymie, it is such an important factor. And I think one of the things that leaders understand very well is numbers, right? When it comes on to profit and losing money. One of the recent white papers that came out of SHRM showed that in the US alone, employers lose up to $223 billion. I'm talking not millions. $1 billion to high rates of employee turnover. And most times when people complete their exit interviews, one of the key things they talk about is the fact that their culture was just too toxic for them. So there are people who take job cuts, take salary cuts just to move out of an environment that they believe has been toxic. So I want you to share from that perspective how, as an employer, they can look at that as one important factor in terms of how they lose when it comes on to the toxicity in a culture.
So I think when it comes to, you make mention, one of the red flags that you have to look for is a turnover rate in terms of the doors are constantly swinging, people are leaving. And that happens because people feel undervalued. They feel as if you're not investing in them. There's not many opportunities for them to move forward. So as a result of that, and them feeling that way, then you find that they're leaving. As leaders, you have to recognize and you have to identify what the skill sets of your employees are and their strengths, and also what their ambitions are in terms of whatever they're looking to achieve. By identifying those things, it allows you to do things in that work environment to empower them, to motivate them, to inspire them, to have them feel that you recognize what they're doing and that you value what they're doing. If they're not feeling the sense of value or worth, then chances are the next best opportunity that they're faced with, they're going to leave. And they're not necessarily leaving the organization, they're leaving the people in the organization And more
They're leaving the
specifically,
culture.
they're leaving the culture and they're leaving the leader. So that's one of the red flags as a leader or teammate. You're like, why are people leaving? If there's a high turnover rate in your organization, that's a red flag that something is wrong with the culture. And the question is, what do I now do as a leader or member of the team to address that kind of environment, to ensure that we could reduce the number of people who are constantly leaving and the fact that people really want to work? Because when people look at your team, look at your organization, and they recognize that everybody's leaving, the first question is, there must be something there that is pushing them away from this team, from this culture, from this leader. So turnover rate is one of the identifying mark that tells you that this culture has some level of toxicity in that environment, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, that the turnover rate is definitely a factor. And some people may not understand how that translates into the actual numbers, because I know I mentioned like $223 billion a while ago. But when you think about it from this perspective, one employee, one new hire, it costs employees a lot to hire a new employee for a number of reasons. Because you think about moving somebody across country, you think about the cost of getting them trained into the program, for them to get assimilated into that work culture, and also to be producing or become a high performing employee. The research has actually shown that it takes approximately 18 months, 18 months for a new employee to really settle into their role and start producing. So when you think about the qualitative factors and also the quantitative factors surrounding the time frame that it takes a new employee to really immerse themselves into the role and start producing, well, that I think informs why this research is actually such an important factor.
I think the next thing to Shauna is that every time somebody new is added to the team, the culture shifts or it changes. And that change not only impacts the team, but it impacts everybody who interacts or engages with the team. So you think about persons who you're offering services. If every time they get to that desk, there's somebody new dealing with them. Every time they pick up the phone for a deal, it's a new voice who's asking, what's your name? Where are you from? How can I help you? You know, that level of familiarity is gone with that employee who's now leaving. And that will automatically impact your results. You know, people want to work with people. People want to engage with people who know them, have some level of familiarity with them, and can offer them the solutions based on their understanding of what their needs are. So when you think about this red flag in terms of high turnover rate, as a red flag in organizations, something that leaders, you must pay attention to, because if you fail to do that, you may be hiring people on the front end, but your profit is going out of the back door. And you ask the next question. Now, the red flag that I think about as I think about that, Shauna, is the fact that when it comes on to a negative culture, not just a negative culture, but a place where the energy is negative in the team, whereby people are constantly gossiping and people are doing things to negatively impact others. That's another red flag that also not only leads to the turnover rate, but is something that tells you that this environment is not a healthy environment.
We talked about turnover in terms of the impact on the team, and that we should, that's one indicator of it. Before you jump into the negative energy piece, I would love for you to share what are some of the things that a person who sees those high turnover, like I'm working for a company and I see that a bunch of people are leaving, and I know that the culture is toxic. What do I do? Am I supposed to just jump ship too?
So what happens is that you have employees or members of teams, when they see stuff like that, they will hold on until they see a safe path out. And what happened is that at that point, you will no longer be getting discretionary value from that teammate or that member of the team. They're just hanging on to ensure that they're being paid, that their bills are covered. But the first opportunity they get to leave you or to leave the team, they'll be doing it. So you're going to have a lot of placeholders at that point in the organization, because what they're saying is that if we have top talents that are leaving, in a matter of time, the level of productivity will be declining. And if that's happening, it means then that the stability of the organization will no longer be something to be proud of. And if there's no stability, it means that chances are, let me leave before I'm asked to leave. Because if I leave before you ask me to leave, there are better chances for me to get a job or get a recommendation. But if I'm now forced to leave, I'm now without a job, looking for a job. So the value on me as an individual in the team it's no longer what it used to be, because I'm now looking for a job from a company that no longer is in existence.
Right. And I think also that even though there may be opportunities that come up for you to leave, at some point in time, you should take on some role of advocacy, depending on whether or not the culture or the individuals who have influence and impact, where that is concerned, would be willing to listen. So for me, for example, I'd say go ahead and reach out to your supervisor HR and say, hey, I noticed this is happening. Have you guys looked into why people are leaving, and what are we doing to make sure that we retain top talent? Because I think that that's the honest way to go about having the conversation, rather than sitting there and say, hey, I'm just going to check out LinkedIn to see what's going on LinkedIn jobs right now. That's one very important factor. I think we should still go ahead and
But
have conversations.
it comes back to taking ownership, and it starts with the leader of the team. As a leader, you should have your ears on the ground and your eyes should always be peeled. And if you recognize that people are constantly leaving, the first thing that you need to do is connect with your HR team, as you made mention, connect with members of the team and ask the question, why are they leaving? What can I do to improve on the environment that we now have so that you can stay with us? And how can we grow as an organization?
Right.
If you fail to ask those tough questions, because asking those tough questions mean that you're going to get hard core responses,
some answers that you probably don't like.
Definitely. And you should not retaliate when people tell you the truth, because sometimes as a leader, you are the one who is ideally creating that toxic environment. So what I always show leaders, Chauna, is that sometimes you are the epicenter of the problem, and you may not recognize that based on your culturing as a leader, but you're dealing with a new age set of employees who they will not stand for that. And the first opportunity that they get, they'll be leaving. So if you can get people to talk in terms of what they're going through and how you can help with that, then you stand a chance of showing them that you value who they are, and they'll now say, you know what, let me stay on longer and see if there'll be changes where the organization is concerned. And that will impact the results in the long term.
And then there are also some other methods that you can go about ascertaining that information without having contact with people. For example, exit interviews. A lot of people would be very candid on their exit interviews. That's probably a good tool that you can look to for some insights on why is it that this person leaves. We've seen exit interviews where people say, well, this job just seems like a dead end for me, so those are some of the ways that you can actually get that information. But let's move on to that subject matter of negative energy, where there's gossiping. You have people who constantly run to the boss and complain because somebody messes up. You have that infighting. You have that what do you call that now, that rat race, where people are willing to exhibit this crab in a barrel mentality, where you step on other people's heads so you can advance. That's also another factor that affects work toxicity in the workplace.
So the pervasive negativity in the workplace, it will automatically lead to not only disruption in the organization, but lead to, as you made mention, infighting and levels of productivity. And what happens is that you'll be in an environment where it's always tense. People are always on eggshells because you're watching your back, others are watching your back, and people are looking for opportunities to just do something to somebody else, not necessarily for that person's good, but to put them in a better position. And when that's happening in the environment, that's a sign that something is not right. It's a sign that people are not happy. And when people are not happy and fulfilled, and I want to use this big word, it's small, but it's really big. When people no longer feel safe in their work environment, then what's going to happen? You'll see a reflection of that in the level of results and level of productivity. Because when you're not safe, you will not take the risk of going the extra mile, of doing things that you would not have normally done, because you are so fearful of failure. And your fear of failure will prevent you from doing things because you can't afford to have your haters poking holes in your back. So because of that, you're going to stay in that safe space. And the safe space is not always the best space when it comes down to productivity for your team, for yourself, and for the organization. So what happens? The team becomes stagnant because everybody's standing on the wall, watching everybody, just watching to see what may happen.
Waiting for that guy to mess up and make a mistake on his report so you can point it out to the boss. But you want to know something? There's another thing that comes up, and we've seen this a lot in our work, is that when you have negative energy on the team, there's constant infighting. And so what happens is that the leaders and the managers spend most of their time resolving issues between two people rather than spending time on the job itself. So people focus on people rather than focusing on the issues. And then you see where that actually has an impact on the result. If I have to sit in my office for 3 hours trying to get two adults to talk to each other, to get along with each other, then that's taken away from the quality time that we can spend working to fix a problem that could help to add to or add value to the workspace. So that's another important factor. We lose a lot of productivity when we have lots of infighting and negative energy on the team. So that's an important issue.
One of the things that John Maxwell made mention of, as you were talking, Shauna, he said something to the fact that when we have negative, toxic working environment and where the energies is a negative energy, what happens that leaders spend most of their time repairing instead of preparing.
I love it.
So what happened is that instead of you looking for new territory and new opportunity, you're constantly with your hammers and your nail fixing things because people are always fighting. And if people are always fighting, there are always bruises. There are always opportunities to have people mend instead of you charting new territory. So if you forget anything tonight when it comes on to the negative energy in the in the work environment, it puts you on a path whereby you're constantly repairing instead of preparing.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly repairing, it means that you miss out on opportunities to move your team and to grow and to get yourself to where you need to be.
Yes. So leaders, please look out for that red flag. Negative energy. If you find yourself dealing with a lot of those internal conflicts between team members, and it's not around issues, it's around people. Like, I don't like him, I don't like this. Please look out for that. That's definitely
and as you said, Shauna, when it
environment.
comes down to people and issue, is that one thing I always share with leaders is that the gift of awareness is one of the greatest gifts that you can have when you're leading and your teammates could have of each other. Because sometimes the very thing that you don't like about another person is the very thing that the team needs in order for the team to get to the next level. So having that level of understanding would help in terms of preventing some of the infighting that you may have, because the person who's super outspoken, who's constantly calling you out, maybe the person that you really need to advocate on behalf of the team and help to guide that person, whereby there's a time and place in terms of what to say, when to say it. So when you have that gift of awareness, it helps to guide you when it comes down to that negative energy, because some of that negative energy, if it's handled the right way, it could be used to push the team forward.
I agree, 100%. So we just talked about the negative energy, and sometimes there's another factor that another red flag that we want to talk about, and possibly this could spring or come out of that negative energy, and it has to do with poor communication.
Wow.
Speak to that a little bit more,
Yeah,
because communication is such an important factor in the workplace. If I feel like I don't understand the expectations of my leaders, then I'm not going to know how to perform. And so my performance will always be either below par or subpar.
So when you think about communication, communication serves as the backbone for success in any team, in any organization. So think about if you are without your backbone, it means that you're just crawling or creeping. So communication is such an important piece. But what happens is that when you don't have effective communication taking place in a team or an organization, people are now walking in darkness. And if a person is not clear about what they're doing, where they're going, who is leading, then guess what happened? They will find themselves in a position whereby they're most likely be doing something that will not be adding value to not just themselves, but their overall team. So communication is an important part. And as leaders, we have to be deliberate about sharing what is needed and be clear about it. And you also have to understand exactly what are some of the best methods that I can use to assist my team in understanding what the expectations are. Because when they are not clear on the expectations, when they are not clear about the team dynamics, then what happens is that they're going to make decisions that they think are the best decisions for this moment, when that decision may not be what is needed for the team. So communication, as I said before, serves as the backbone for success for any team, any organization. And if we fail to engender a culture that supports clarity, then we're going to find ourselves in a position whereby we'll not be winning, but we'll be constantly losing in whatever you're doing.
And you made a very good point, because I do believe that clarity, I think that's what you just expounded on a while ago. Clarity is very important. It is one of the most important factors that a leader can provide to their team. But if I find that my leader is not someone who's not a great communicator, how can I manage it up?
So I think first, when we share the expectations for a team, right? What I would share with leaders most times is that understanding exactly the bandwidth of those you're working with. What are their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities for growth? And by understanding that, then you use that understanding of that awareness to place given tasks and responsibilities on those persons. And then after doing that, you have to model what the expectations are. And after modeling the expectations, you now have to hold that person accountable. And after holding that person accountable, you have to set guidelines in terms of how you can support that person. So you're not just expecting things without putting rails and chairs and ropes to guide them to the top, but you're providing them with the support so that they're insulated, so that they're not just there expected to do something that they're not capable of doing, but you're there to say that I'm willing not only to teach you, to support you, to coach you, to mentor you, and I'm also here to hold you accountable. And if all those pieces are timed properly and they're put in place, then I can bet you that that person, they may not like the fact that you're holding them accountable, but they'll be able to say that, you know what, I don't like the fact that I'm held accountable, but he or she showed me exactly what the expectations are. They've modeled it, and they're willing to support me through coaching or mentorship.
Excellent point. And I just want to pause here to welcome those of you who are online with us. This is the Strategic Alignment Podcast, and I am so delighted that you've joined us here. Good to see you, Latasha. Can't we all just get along? Don't you wish? Don't you wish? I wish we could all get along. This is a very important subject matter, because Jaymie and I are just discussing, we're just discussing the whole subject matter of how to know, how to spot the 7 red flags in a toxic work culture. Mark you, there are more, but these are among the more, what we would call pervasive. And in terms of feedback that we've received from different employees who've left and research, we come to the conclusion that there are 3 factors. And so far, we've mentioned the high turnover rates. We've talked about the fact that there's a lot of negative energy in the workplace when you see a lot of complaining, gossiping, politics, backbiting happening. As a leader, you find yourself sitting in on a lot of conversations where you're trying to get people to get along. Those are some of the indicators. And then we also talked about poor communication being one of the factors. Jaymie, I want you real quickly to just touch on one more factor. And this has to do with work-life balance. I have been to so many workshops and seminars in recent times where we see a greater focus and attention being given to wellness, workplace wellness, and the need for people to be mentally well as they navigate work-life balance. I want you to talk about that for a little bit, and possibly share, Jaymie, how you managed to accomplish work-life balance.
Well, because I was called out, I'm going to shake the devil and speak the truth. I work a lot. Let's put it that way. But I'll share this.
You're not going to use the word
workaholic. So I'm told that I'm a workaholic, and that's all right. It's not okay. When you think about work-life balance, we're told by many folks that there's no such thing as work-life balance. But what I'll share is that if you're part of a team and the sole priority has everything to do with the work or the task, then that's a problem. And the reason why that's a problem is that a work or a task can only be completed by a person. So if a work or a task can only be completed by a person, then priority should be the person. Because in order to get the work done, you need to have the person there.
Something there.
So what happens is that when you hear leaders, and I'm sure talking leaders, because I just had a conversation 2 days ago with a director for an organization, we're talking about this very same thing. And when you have teams or organizations that their sole purpose is investing in just results and not thinking about persons who are passing the baton or the persons who are getting the job done, then you're on the wrong path. And that's a sign of a red flag in the organization. It's super important for you to understand that people first, because when you invest in people, when people have the extra energy, when they have the confidence, when they feel valued, when they feel secure, then they will give you more than what you need because you've given them what they want. And it's always going to be a win-win for you as a leader and for a team. So I would say that work-life balance is super important. If you have employees who are happy, if you have employees who are transformed and fulfilled, then chances are they will give you the discretionary value that you need. They will go the extra mile, and they will give not just you what is needed, but they will show up with the right attitude that will inspire the team. And that will take away from the negative energy. Because when people are happy, they want to love, they want to share, they want to help, they want to see things expand, they want to see things grow. But when people are in a groggy, nasty, negative mood, and they feel as if they are second place in the organization, then they're going to give you second level tasks. They're going to be showing up with an F attitude, and they're going to be giving you F-like tasks or productivity level when they're like that.
Yeah, that's a very important factor, because I think that really the whole subject matter of sorry.
So why
work-life balance, Jaymie? My apologies. My throat is giving me a warm time. The whole idea about work-life balance to me really comes down to the whole idea of valuing people and humanizing them. And there are times when you would feel like your leader or your supervisor views you as a machine. Why do I say this? They know you have a family. They know that this family requires some amount of attention. You know, it's back to school time. You're trying to get things for the kids and so on. But you find that you ask for the time off to be away from work so you could take care of some things. And while you're off, you're getting text messages on your phone. Hey, where did you put such and such? We need this report to go in. So you find yourself in the middle of the store responding to emails. I'm talking about the practical side of this. Now, if I find myself in that position where my leader is really just, in my view, just dissolving all the barriers and boundaries that I would have put up, how do I respond to that if I find myself in such a position where consistently I say I'm off, I'm not here? What do I do if I'm working with someone who's not necessarily observing those boundaries?
What I'll say first, Chauna, is that our position or our levels may be different, but our needs are similar. Our positions and levels in the organization may be different, but our needs are similar. The fact that our needs are similar means that the same needs that I have as a person with a family are the same needs that you may have as a person with a family. And at that point, that's when you have to reestablish your boundaries. You have to reestablish your boundaries, and you may be like, Jaymie, I won't do that. But the thing about it that I've noticed is that employees who are fearful of establishing their boundaries, they may think that they may be overproducing or get a greater level of admiration from their leaders. But what ends up happening is that their level of productivity ends up going further down. They have a reduction in their productivity level. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, their failure of establishing their boundaries, they now end up breeding a sense of resentment, and that impact how they produce when it comes down to the team. Instead of your leader now liking you more for you not holding them accountable, they end up resenting you more because you did not set boundaries or hold them accountable, and your level of productivity is not one that they're now in favor of. So a leader is always going to be one who supports the fact that you may be forward, frank, and assertive, but you're producing, than for you to be always withholding and reducing in terms of the significance in what you're producing. So you owe that to yourself in terms of setting your boundaries. And if that's not working and you have an HR representative, you need to have that conversation with HR and say, guess what? I was given the time off. And even though I got the time off, I still feel as if I was a little bit bullied into getting back on work ahead of time. And that's not fair for me and my family. So the very reason that I left my workstation to get something done, I'm now doing a worse off job. That's not good for me nor the team. So you have the right to stand up for not just your right, but setting those boundaries and holding your leaders accountable.
Jaymie, I think we are well past the time. We are right there on the 30-minute mark. Okay, so do you think we could do this in another segment?
So we'll have to do it in another segment.
I think we can finish up the rest of this next week. We're gonna come right back here and talk about the other three elements within 3 red flags that you should look out for as it relates to workplace toxicity. And just wanted to remind you that Pottinger and Associates Consulting, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. If you're watching right now, you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel or followed us on Facebook, we're going to invite you to do that right now. And we just want to thank each of you for joining us. I see that Damien was online. And I also see that we had, the man, the myth, the legend, Darren Hill online. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we ask that you come right back here as we discuss the very important subject matter of how to spot the toxicity in your workplace and what to do about it. For me personally, on that very last question that I asked Jaymie about how to strike that work-life balance and what to do when you have that manager or that boss who just will not observe your boundaries. It's my vacation, please don't contact me while I'm off work. Well, here's what I say: turn that phone off, send them to voicemail, and I'm totally good with that. But thank you so much again for joining us for this episode of the Strategic Alignment Podcast. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Strategic Alignment Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to our podcast by visiting our website at www.pottingerandassociatesconsulting.com.